how do you go and capture people and push them down the funnel to that point, that moment of truth between the brand and the person? At which point those agencies go, great, our job's done, over to you, brand, or someone else, to then carry them through on that journey a little bit more. I think the name actually does quite a lot of good work for us. We take that journey further, right? So we'll bring people to the brand as fast and as effectively as possible, but we'll keep them in the brand as long as possible.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Duncan Smith. He's the CEO at Journey Further. Duncan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Duncan, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a married father of three. We've got a little 6-year-old here and a dog as well. So live just north of New York, up in Westchester County. Been in the States for best part of a decade now. So first moved over here beginning of 2011. Had a little bit of time back in Europe, lived in Amsterdam, which was quite nice for a while, and then moved back home in 2016. So yeah, very suburban. Been working in media and advertising for over 20 years now. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And yeah, just really good to be on the podcast today.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the journey of how you got to Journey Further.
So I started my career back in 2000. Had a little bit of break after college, went traveling for a while, got to a point where I decided I need to be back and getting into work, and didn't know very much at all about media, which is what I ended up in. I knew I wanted to do something around advertising. I'd done sort of arts degrees and liked the idea of being creative in something to do with work. And so got back to the UK, had a bunch of interviews with recruitment consultants, all of whom thought I should go into media. And then I realized they were all media consultants, and but hadn't really heard about what it was before. And I got sold on the idea of really a lot of what I focused on, I guess, in the kind of intervening period, around how do you take consumer insights and understanding and then really turn that into something that's going to help your clients sell what they're making, connect with people in a different and engaging way. And so started, back in 2000, worked for really big networks for a long time. So a bit of Publicis, WPP, probably spent about 15, 16 years at various WPP agencies. Back to Publicis, off to Dentsu in 2016. So really was with them for quite a long time. And the last job I did before Journey Further was really bringing together two agencies within Dentsu, a big performance marketing agency and more of a kind of creatively driven, insight-driven media agency to form what's now iProspect. And, you know, after 20 years of working in the networks for the man, I just wanted a bit more independence. I think, you know, there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of bureaucracy that goes on. You can't move as fast as you want to. And while it's fantastic working with people and really developing a product and bringing people along with you, I just felt I needed a new challenge. So I started talking to a chap called Robin Skidmore, who is the founder of Journey Further at the beginning of 2022. And really the conversations just progressed from there. He wanted to launch the business in the States. I was looking for a new challenge, and it all came together really well.
That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about Journey Further.
So we're quite an integrated marketing services agency. I think coming from really the paid media side of things over the last 20 odd years, it's been apparent that that is not really where consumers want to be interacting as much with brands anymore. Those paid spaces, those interruptive spaces in between TV shows or your YouTube videos and so on. It's grating, to say the least, I think, when you're getting interrupted and that content is just not relevant for the moment that you're in. And I think a lot of the legacy, the bigger networks, haven't really kept up to the same pace as consumers in terms of understanding new formats and ways to engage with them outside of those fairly sort of standard paid spaces. Whereas Journey Further's just got a very different model. It's been built out performance channels. So ultimately, it's an agency that's been driven by consumer behavior, not the media industry and where they want to sell advertising. And so, what are people searching for? How are they engaging with content? How are they interacting with that content? Has then sort of allowed us to develop a bunch of performance channels from paid search, but also a huge focus on SEO, a huge focus on on-site conversion, creative and content that allows us to actually build things that people are looking for and that brands can sort of invest their time and energy into outside of that very interruptive sort of paid space. Yeah. So to an extent we're evolving sort of the work in the way that consumers want to interact with us, rather than sort of trying to find new ways to monetize media in a rather old model.
Yeah. So talking a little bit about the integrated model that Journey Further is able to use, how are you able to differentiate yourself from other, competitors?
Well, I think the fact that we do look at things in the round definitely differentiates ourselves. I think you have a lot of content marketing and maybe organic agencies that will look at how do we work with clients to create branded integrations? How do we help their website sort of perform as much as possible? How do we focus on the SEO and the content and creative side of things? Or you have agencies that are kind of coming at it from the other end, which is really where I'd come from, which is how do you go and capture people and push them down the funnel to that point, that moment of truth between the brand and the person, at which point those agencies go, great, our job's done, over to you, brand, or someone else, to then carry them through on that journey a little bit more. I think the name actually does quite a lot of good work for us. We take that journey further, right? So we'll bring people to the brand as fast and as effectively as possible, but we'll keep them in the brand as long as possible because of all that interesting collateral engagement that we're able to build on the other side. So for me, it's that holisticity that's actually really quite unique, I think, to what we offer.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people outside of the industry and outside of the space understand how psychological a lot of the marketing is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's psychological in two ways, right? One is about the understanding of people's behaviors and motivations and how you can tap into those behaviors to engage with them in the most relevant ways. But there's been a lot of talk recently about attention, certainly in the media world. How do you create attention as a currency? I did a lot of work on that in my last place, but attention is only half of the equation. Yes, you can go and grab people's attention. Yes, you can go and find those moments where their attention is highest. But if you're not delivering them something really relevant to their mindset in that particular moment, one, you may not just engage, but at worst, you're actually going to annoy them because you've delivered something that is not in tune with their current sort of mood. So psychology, I think, comes into it in two ways. How do you understand the macro sort of motivations of people in order to position your communications and your brand in the right way? But then sort of on a micro level, how do you understand the individual sort of motivations at that moment in time to deliver the most salient piece of work possible?
So talking a little bit about kind of who your ideal client may be that you work with, talk to me a little bit about what that persona may look like.
I think really sort of progressiveness is something I always look for, and not in a political way, but more in, how do we want to really continue to move things on? How can we, that whole notion, I was thinking about it this morning for some reason, when you have clients that go, well, that's the way it's always been done, that's a massive red flag for me, because it may be, but you're never going to see any evolution of your product. You're never going to see any evolution of your audience. I think you see this in all walks of life when brands, advertisers, political parties, have stuck to the tried and tested for too long. Their audience ends up aging out, and new generations coming through have got nothing to engage with whatsoever. So I think for me, that willingness to experiment, to evolve, to innovate, to just try something out, and yes, make sure it's tested and make sure it's backed up with sort of evidence and so on. But not having a desire to do new things, I think, is a big turnoff. And I'd absolutely always be looking for clients that want to do new stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's a very important part of growth. I think part of growth is being uncomfortable and kind of stepping outside the comfort zone. Everyone's kind of scared to say, like, all right, well, I'm going to try something new just for their own sake. But it is such an important part of growth and like continuing to grow a company, like you said.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. The the need to be a little uncomfortable, the need to take that step into the unknown. I think that's where you get that progression. That's where you actually move on, because if you're not willing to try new stuff, if you're not willing to take some degree of risk, even if it's a kind of calculated one, someone else is going to steal a march on you.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, you said you started, I think, with Journey Further in 2022, right?
Yeah.
So over the course of this year, how have you been able to kind of work to continue to build Journey Further's name, and what changes have you seen?
Well, I mean, we benefit from having a pretty well-established agency in the UK, which is great. So there's a little bit of a halo effect we have from that side of things. So that's definitely helped, and it's also meant we've got a huge amount of expertise sitting the other side of the Atlantic that we can tap into when we need it. But otherwise, I mean, I think with any business, it comes through contacts. Who do you know? What are the conversations you can have? How can you start to really bring those out into what do we do that we could apply for you? Do you want to have a go? Back to sort of the last point we were talking about. Do you want to take a little bit of a risk? We might have been an unknown quantity at some point in the US, but we've got a huge bank of really great work we've done. Is that something you'd be interested in us applying to your business? So that's it starts to snowball, and you build more momentum and more case studies, which is definitely how it's worked. I think on a slightly more functional side of things, we also have a bunch of products, tools, technologies, and sort of approaches to communication that we're able to test for clients either free of charge or relatively sort of cost effectively. Certain sort of technologies we can apply to understand how relevant a client's content is to their audience. Now that's a fairly top line survey that we can run free of charge, certainly a light version of it, which allows us to open up a conversation to say, well, look, we've had a look at your content. You know what, your competitors are way more relevant than you are in these areas. This is something you should think about sort of upgrading. Your editorial content, for instance, is just not hitting the mark against these points. And because you've got some evidence against their business at that stage, it's a much more productive conversation than to say, well, this is what we do to help you change that up. How about, giving us a go? Because otherwise, I think, without that degree of evidence or understanding of a client's business, it's really hard to get anything going, because you're not able to prove what you say you can do.
So break that down a little bit more for me. So whenever you start working, with a new company or a new brand, you do a deep kind of dive into what they're currently doing. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so there are a number of things that we'll look at. Certainly when we're starting to work with a new brand, we have a tool called Salient, which is the piece of technology that we use to understand the relevancy of the content, both on site and off site for a particular brand. So I think when we're actually working with clients, that's a very thorough analysis that we'll have a look at across really every piece of content that they've got versus their category in the competition, to understand, are you hitting the mark? If you're a cruise liner, for instance, and you're going in one direction and the competition are all going another, that might be great to generate some degree of awareness and differentiation, but is it actually delivering the content that people that want to go on cruises are really interested in? And if not, maybe you need to think about evolving it so you're actually capturing that audience in a meaningful way, not just grabbing their attention, but offering them something they're not interested in. So those are the sort of slightly more consultative, I guess, bits of advice and direction that Salient can help provide. And then, we have a huge amount of work we do on the CRO side of things. So beyond the content is the actual construction of your business and working properly to actually convert the people that you're bringing into your business into actual customers, or delivering that degree of advocacy. And we also do a lot of work on the paid performance side of things as well, really running a lot of audits around, is your keyword selection correct? Are you in the right media actually for the audience that you're going after? And it then just turns into much more of a strategic recommendation around how do you want to change up your investment to deliver a better audience and a better return.
Talk to me a little bit more about kind of some of those tools that you're able to utilize to increase that.
I mean, we'll use a range of tools, from sort of syndicated panel research like an MRI or a Simmons to actually understand the audience, really to a lot of the vendor-based tools in platform. So Google Analytics, for instance, into sort of DV360, where we'll have a look at both matching where the audience is to the types of media that we should be investing in, and understand what degree of investment is actually required. How many of the people we're going after are in there? What frequency do we want to be engaging with them upon? And then, what does it actually cost to do that? I think the beauty of a lot of media today is that you can see the results almost immediately. You can see the level of interaction, and that's not just across the sort of lower funnel performance media, but even when we think about broadcast TV now, most of the TV that you and I watch, I would argue, is probably streaming, or it's coming through something other than just a cable box or through your aerial. And if that's the case, the people pushing that content out, be it the broadcasters or be it an intermediary platform, understand who you are, what advertising you've seen, and how that's then related back to an action you might have taken later through your phone or your computer. So that closed loop that's starting to become much more prevalent across all of advertising allows you to see the kind of cause and effect almost in real time. So I think the other bit that we're very good at is adapting and reacting and optimizing our clients' media as we go along. So if there's a particular KPI that we're after, and let's say it's test drive requests on a automotive website, we'll be able to see through the application of that media almost instantaneously, is that blend correct? Are we getting enough test drives over here? And if not, how do we need to rejigger things around in order to get a better return in terms of those test drive requests? So it's a very different and much more dynamic model, I think, than previously.
No, absolutely. It sounds like it too. So Duncan, if you were to leave our listeners with one piece of information, either about Journey Further or the industry and the space, what would you want to leave our listeners with?
I think from a personal point of view, it's been fantastic really coming out of the bigger networks and joining a much more independent and really ambitious business. So I would say that if you get an opportunity like that, you should absolutely take it. I think, everything we were talking about risk earlier, you're never going to progress if you're not prepared to take some degree of risk. So I would definitely say that. I think from a more practical point of view, really, I think how we've built the business at Journey Further with the consumer at the heart of absolutely everything is absolutely the way that businesses need to think. We understand better than anybody where people are, what they're doing, and how to interact with them. And we've built a business around that interaction entirely. And so I think, if you're operating any business today and you haven't got that understanding of how your audience, your target audience, your customers are interacting with your product absolutely innately, then you're not going to do as well, let's say. So really, really understanding that interaction between people and your business is, I think, the key to success.
Yeah. And I think that that's one thing that Journey Further is able to really help companies succeed with, is dialing that in. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the number one thing we do. It's the start of every single presentation. And it always leads to better results.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Duncan, I really appreciate you being on Business Ninjas today. This has been a great conversation. Again, Duncan Smith, he's the CEO at Journey Further. Duncan, thank you.
Thanks very much.